Today, I'm going to read to you a brief I submitted to the Trudeau government 2 years ago in 2022. You may be asking, why am I sharing it now? Aren't we back to normal? On surface appearances, sure, we're back to normal. It's easy to ignore the breadcrumbs of the globalist parasites and live a fairly regular existence, just like we used to. But when I heard Bret Weinstein describe to Tucker Carlson what the WHO has planned for humanity, all of my anxieties and fears were described, and I felt validation for how I've been feeling for the past 4 years. I'm not the only one who sees the pieces being laid by the globalist organizations, including like the WHO, UN, WEF, for not so great plans for humanity. Many people definitely see it. It just happened to be Weinstein that described it in a way that really resonated. And he said that some fates are worse than death. And I do think that if the WHO has the power grab that they're going for, that most of us will feel that way. So soon after I saw the Weinstein video, a high fever hit me just before I went to bed. For 6 hours, I laid there, too weak to move. I was hallucinating and having the most realistic lucid dreams. And even though it was excruciating, this was also one of the most spiritual experiences that I've ever had. I was connected to God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And during this encounter, I agreed that I would make a video of my brief and release it into the world so it could find those who need to hear it. And as I agreed to do this, my fever broke, just in time to feed my baby, who still gets up in the night. So it's our second little guy, and this is him. So also just in time for me to stay earthside. I really feel like agreeing to use my voice and tell my story actually saved my life that night. There are definitely a few touch and go moments. Perhaps if we all tell our stories and stand together with one voice for humanity, we'll save our lives and the future lives of all human beings. We're not meant to be ruled by power-hungry, globalist parasites. We're meant to be free. Free to be close to nature. Free to dream, free to create. Free to hunger for knowledge and truth. Free to imagine a present and a future of a better world with less suffering and more love, light, and abundance that we know could be. Free to pray and have a relationship with the divine and the spiritual, and free to be who we really are, the best versions of ourselves and the best versions of humanity. So with that, I will share my story. I don't represent any organizations, professions, unions, etc. I represent only myself, one constituent in a supposed free and democratic society, using my voice to express how government policy affected my life to the government who enacted these policies. So this is my personal experience and my brief. When the pandemic started, I was having my third miscarriage after having several years of infertility prior to starting to get pregnant and having miscarriages. I thought I was nearing the end of my personal nightmare, but I had no idea that it was actually just beginning. I contracted COVID-19 in March of 2020. It wasn't pleasant, but I recovered with one outpatient visit to my doctor. I got pregnant again in August of 2020. This pregnancy was successful, and we have a wonderful, healthy, vibrant son. That's this little guy now, who's 2. While pregnant, I experienced several lockdowns where I could not see anyone outside of my husband, including my biggest support, who is my mother. I was isolated, I was lonely, I was missing my favorite events like Christmas, having something like a baby shower. What should have been really, after the infertility and miscarriages, the happiest time of my life was instead one where I was often deeply sad. I was often very despondent, and I just had this general sense of hopelessness. There are many days when I could not control my crying, and it would last for hours because of the cruel and inhumane way that I was forced to exist. As my due date neared and my husband worked nights, no one could stay with me due to the COVID rules. I was incredibly anxious that I'd go into labor alone, which was 100% against my wishes. My mom took my birth class with me online. When I went to the hospital to deliver, she was told to go home as the rules had changed that morning. I was incredibly anxious and heartbroken, which resulted in my labor stalling for hours and hours. And it took me 44 hours to deliver after the support that I needed was carelessly stripped. The vaccine rollout occurred when I was pregnant. I wasn't eligible. With no long-term research or data, suddenly I was being pushed to get it while breastfeeding. After my infertility and miscarriage experience, I decided I wasn't comfortable getting an mRNA injection, which is a new technology, and was only in phase 2 clinical trials at the time. I also have 3 medical concerns that contraindicate this as a good option, not to mention natural immunity. I do believe I could have a severe adverse reaction or potentially even die as a result of being injected. As someone who is health conscious, I weighed the risks against the benefits, and I engaged in informed consent, assuming this would be respected as it always had in the past. I had no idea what I experienced while pregnant was really just the beginning. In the summer of 2021, Justin Trudeau called a snap election, and he weaponized the VAC status, which the very definition of VAC changed to suit this injection, which is more of a therapeutic, of millions of Canadians for votes. In his now infamous speech, he said that the VAC-free take up space and asks if they should be tolerated. His actions and speeches have revolved around dehumanizing, scapegoating, and blaming those who chose not to take this for all the problems occurring in Canada, because every issue can be fixed by being vaxxed twice and then taking a booster. Trudeau has went as far as to say that because of personal medical decisions, a group in Canada is misogynistic, racist, and a fringe minority with unacceptable views. In the fall of 2021, the vaccine passports were put into place. My husband and I took September to get some fun things in while we could. We took our son to the museum and we went swimming. Then, as a new mom on maternity leave, I was shut out of society. I was treated like a diseased parasite who was putting others at risk, despite having natural immunity and despite the fact that I was healthy. And I never did get sick again. Needless to say, over the fall and winter, I got a taste of what being dehumanized feels like. I was allowed to go to friends' houses, but I wasn't allowed to go indoors, to use the bathroom, or to breastfeed my child. Despite prioritizing family, I've lost most extended relatives as they have cut me out of their lives and blocked me on social media. One of my aunts will see me in person, but only outdoors. Professional groups I met with sent messages that I was no longer welcome and would not be accommodated by going online. The simple pleasure of getting out of the house felt terrifying. So once again, I was isolated and alone, and now with a deep sense of shame, all because of one decision that I believe was and is in the best interest of me and my sons, now sons. Since the vaccine rollout, my tax dollars have been used to fund campaigns against me. My contributed monies are used to create and maintain the passport segregation system, along with commercials and videos designed to target me. My property taxes funded services that I can no longer utilize. I would like to note that my tax dollars were used to punish and ostracize me instead of being directed into healthcare. I find this super ironic since the public has been told over and over again that these measures are necessary just so that hospitals don't get overwhelmed. This winter, the Health Minister of Canada, Jean-Yves Duclos, wanted to see provinces and territories mandate this vaccine. Just writing this sends chills down my spine. The idea that my ability to control what happens to my body could be taken away from me is terrifying, especially since I've already survived this exact scenario. Starting when I was 3 and ending when I came forward at 10, I was sexually molested by a family member. It's hard to believe that we're at a place where I feel like I need to bring this up, because most of my closest friends and my family don't even know that this happened to me. You see, when someone violates the most sacred covenant of sovereignty over your own body, there's a sense of shame and resulting trauma. I did not consent to what was repeatedly done to me, but I was conditioned and I was manipulated and into complying under duress and coercion with a veil of silence. And now I'm seeing the parallels happen again. Considering mandated mandating what gets injected into everybody's body speaks to how corrupt this campaign has truly become. What may be necessary for one individual may injure or even kill another. As such, when there is risk, there must always be choice. It has also been rather eye-opening that I continue to face harsher punishments than the person who abused me and was convicted with pedophilia. His job was never threatened. He could eat in restaurants. He was able to move freely in society and get on a train, plane, or boat. His papers, or lack thereof, have never kept him out of the public sphere and confined to his home. Oh, but he's not a diseased super spreader, elderly killer, ICU bed hog responsible for every problem in Canada and undeserving of life. Right, how could I forget? What I have learned through this experience is that if you don't do what the government dictates, you do not matter. Your human rights do not matter. Your feelings do not matter. How you are treated does not matter. And the fact that you are segregated, dehumanized, scapegoated, blamed, hated, othered, and lied about doesn't matter. I wanted to take this moment to remind anyone reading this far that I am still a human being. Strange that I feel the need to do this in Canada, but the way I've been treated and the societal messages I've received and internalized, like, you do not matter, you do not deserve compassion, you should be denied health care, you should be severely punished until you comply, I hope you die, suggest I do. I'm very close to my mom and brother, and my dad died a few years ago of cancer. When I was in high school, I was a gymnast, a diver, and a cheerleader. I wasn't amazing at any of them, but I did have a passion and a love for them. I've always been an avid reader, and I have an English degree and another undergrad and master's degree, which allows me to be a professional in mental health. I've recently finished my first novel. I'm an outdoors person, and I grew up camping in a tent. I love getting outside and hiking, especially in the mountains. When I was going through my miscarriages, I discovered paddleboarding. I've been on many full-day trips down lakes and rivers, and it's a place where I truly feel at peace. But in the last 2 years, it's definitely not as peaceful, but I do still enjoy it. I love music and dancing, and I've been to EDC in Vegas twice, which is the second largest music festival in the world. I'm very sensitive, and I do feel my emotions quite deeply. The last 2 years has inflicted upon me the worst trauma to date. People I love worry about me, and they suggest that medication might help. But I don't have a chemical or a neurological imbalance. If I was treated with kindness and respect, I would be thriving, happy, and productive. This is a cultural and a societal problem, not a me problem. My experiences in the last 2 years have been grueling, exhausting, painful, and soul-crushing. And that includes the lockdowns and the mandates before I was pushed into a minority camp and scapegoated as the problem. The damage done will likely, for most people involved, take many years to work through and process. For some, it'll be a lifetime. And I think I'm in that camp. I'll never get over what happened. I'm not even close to over it now. There are many sources coming to light now about how this pandemic has been mismanaged from the start on a global scale. In conclusion, my experience has been that the emergency powers have allowed Canadian officials with power to act in ways that disregard any protections of our rights or our freedoms. Add to that Justin Trudeau's constant dehumanizing, blaming, and hatred towards me and people like me, and it has been a very stressful time of wondering what's going to be inflicted on me in the name of safety. There have been many moments where all I want to do is flee to a place where I'm not persecuted and marginalized like this. But I can't even get on a plane and leave the country. I would like to see measures put in place to stop the current federal mandates and then protections to make sure that what I've experienced never happens again. And this is where saying no to all the WHO stuff really comes in. I also hope that I'm not punished for sharing my account, like having my bank account frozen or having another right stripped. I should not be afraid to share my lived experience, but that is no longer the country we live in. I am afraid. Even today, years later, I'm still afraid. But I no longer think this is a good enough reason to stay silent. Besides not getting the vac, I have complied in every other way. And look what that has gotten me. Not much.